Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello and welcome back to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton and this is episode 77. And today I'm going to talk about the dumbest reason we tend to fail at weight loss. Okay, I know I'm a little harsh calling it dumb. And I'm not calling anyone dumb. No one is dumb for doing this. But when you really take a step back and look at it from a non-emotional perspective, I can guarantee you, I'll send you a buck if anybody can tell me that isn't true, that they think, yeah, that was kind of dumb. Yeah, that was not a good choice. I feel a little dumb that I did that, right? So, but I can also guarantee we've almost all done it. So what is it? What is this thing? It's mistaking water weight fluctuations for fat fluctuations. Let me explain. Okay, so when we are in a body, such as we all are, there are fluctuating levels of water weight, right? So what do we weigh, right? We get on a scale and it measures what we weigh, what our mass is. And that mass is made up of a variety of things. It's made up of muscle mass, hair, skin, and nails. We've got fat mass, and we've got water. We've also got things like the weight of the food in our digestive tract. Have you peed? Do you need to go to the bathroom? These kinds of things, they all impact what that number is when we step upon the scale. And so a lot of us, when we undertake fat loss, we will find that we become very attached to what the scale says. Of course, right? What we feel like is probably our best measure of what we desire, which we think is weight loss. But it's really fat loss, right? I get it though, because the scale is really the easiest measurement or the thing we've been conditioned to pay attention to, which we think reflects the fat loss. Because, getting a daily DEXA scan is probably not in the cards for most people, even if they could afford it, lucky ducky that they might be. It's just a problem for your schedule if you have anything to do. So we do things like weighing ourselves every day or weekly or monthly or whenever to try and determine, does this look like I've lost weight in a way that I want to, which is to say body fat. But I think so often we've been conditioned growing up to not pay enough attention to fat loss. Even I do it to this day. I'll say weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. I don't want weight loss. I want fat loss. I don't want my hair to weigh less. But by losing body fat, I will weigh less. But if somebody handed me 30 pounds of muscle and said, we're going to trade this, if people do this, I'm in. Please tell me where to get it. But if someone's like, here, I'm going to hand you 30 pounds of muscle and you're going to hand me 30 pounds of fat, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would weigh the same because I've just traded fat for muscle. But it's a really good bargain. I'll take it. So you get my point, hopefully, that we want to lose, most of the time, we want to lose body fat. We don't want to lose muscle mass. Unless you're a very specific type of athlete and you need to be lighter, like maybe you're in the Tour de France or something. This is not most of us. And so we should care about fat loss. And we should focus on that. And so it's just me, you, we'll make a little agreement, me and you, that we'll remind each other. Okay, you'll remind me, I'll remind you, because sometimes I'm going to mess up, sometimes you're going to mess up. When you start to say weight loss, be like, no, fat loss, fat loss. That's what I care about, not weight loss. However, the scale is a way that you can monitor what is likely fat loss. I'm not anti-scale, but I just want to make sure we're really honest. And there's a word I'm looking for while I'm trying not to sneeze. It's very confusing in my head right now. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Okay, So I want to be really realistic. That's the word I was looking for, which is to say the thing that alters day to day weight is more than anything your water weight fluctuations. So, what do I mean by water weight fluctuations? Well, in our body, we have quite a bit of water. And because of this, this will fluctuate. What causes water weight fluctuations? And when I say water weight fluctuations, it can also include things that are not entirely water weight, like the amount of food still in your digestive system one day versus another. That can also impact your day to day weight fluctuations, right? If you, I mean, I don't want to be indelicate, people, but if you have like a nasty case of the runs, you're going to weigh less. And it's just because things are flowing through you and they're not staying in your digestive tract as long as they normally do. Whereas if you have the opposite problem, you're going to weigh more, not because you have more or less body fat. You just have things in your digestive tract that aren't normally there. And those are going to be counted on the scale. So that's part of the fluctuating weight levels. And then there's like, how much did you drink versus how much salt did you get versus, all sorts of things. Like, did you eat a food that can make you retain a little more water? So we all have these different effects that can vary from day to day. And these numbers can vary 1% to 2% a day, which means that if you weigh 200 pounds between between zero, right? None, between 0 and 4 pounds of variation might be possible, depending on all those things put together. That's an incredible amount of variation. Now, it's not usually 2%. That's sort of the extreme end, but it could happen. I mean, it's happened to all of us, right? Say you ate a meal with a ton more carbs than you usually do. You had what some might call like a cheat meal. You might be up like 7, 8 pounds. Like, it can happen pretty significantly. Now, that's a pretty extreme example, but if you're not used to eating carbs and you eat a lot more carbs than usual, because carbs cause the body to retain more water, you are now going to be up quite a few pounds more than you would be in other circumstances. So the exact numbers don't matter too terribly much, but I'm just putting it out there that day to day, you'll see water weight fluctuations. In a person, it probably what's more realistic, what I tend to see is maybe a half pound to a pound. Like, I'll have a random day that I'm up 1.5 pounds and I'm like, oh, okay, water weight. I have to remember that. And I call it water weight, but you're with me that it includes a bunch of things. Food in my system, yada, yada, yada. Non-fat is what we would call it, non-fat weight. But let me trace this back. So now that I've set the scene, right, that we can have these daily fluctuations of what we're going to weigh on the scale that have a zippo zero zilcho to do with body fat fluctuations. And then we add to that mix. So we're like overlaying it with our attempt to lose body fat. Now, what's a realistic amount of body fat for somebody to lose in a week? Is, somewhere on the range of 0.5% to 1% of their body weight. So what did I just tell you? That you might fluctuate 1% a day in rando weight, but you might only be able to lose 1% a week in body fat. So that means, wow, that loss of body fat can be completely obscured by water weight fluctuations or by non-fat weight fluctuations. And so a lot of people have this experience. See if you identify with it. So they start their new diet restriction, whatever. They're like, I have a plan and this plan is going to lose me 1 pound a week. My plan is to lose 1 pound this week. I'm going to be down 1 pound by the end of the week. So they weigh themselves on Sunday morning and they're 180 pounds and they're like, okay, it's my starting point. And they weigh themselves on 1 week later on Sunday morning and they weigh 181 pounds. And they are like, what the F, right? Like, what? I gained 1 pound. How is this even possible? Well, they may very well have lost 0.5 pound or even 1 pound over the course of that week. However, for one reason or another. I can list them again, but it's like specific foods you ate, the amount of sodium you got, were you really careful about monitoring your fluid intake? How's your digestion? Did you use the bathroom today? And you didn't you did it before, like where are you at with digesting the food? Did you happen to eat a lot of like really heavy things in terms of like the weight of the food in your digestive system? Where are you in your cycle? All of those things together can mean that on one day versus another day, you're up a certain amount of weight that has nothing to do with body fat. But if you actually tracked long term, you would be over time seeing that weight go down. So what I actually advocate these days, and it feels scary to say because there are those of us this is not good for mentally. And so let me go into, in a perfect world where a person can separate their self-worth from what the scale says, I actually think we are best off weighing ourselves every day. I know it's shocking to say that because so often we say the opposite, but let me explain. Stay with me to the end. If you weigh yourself every day and chart that, you actually get a really good view into what the weight is doing on the scale. So say one day you're 180, the next day you're 181 and a half, the next day you're 182, the next day you're 179, right? So you're seeing this. Now, what I think is actually very important is that you're also tracking your food intake over this time. So let's just look at a week. We're just looking at a random week. That whole week, you actually want to be tracking your food and be eating about the same amount of food every day. So the same amount of fat, the same amount of protein, the same amount of carbs, give or take, 5 grams. So you want to be in that range the whole week. So you're like, from one day to another, the amount of food is not varying significantly. So you're tracking that. And then you're monitoring what your daily weight is. And then at the end of the week, you're going to have 7 weights. You're going to add them together and you're going to average them. So if you have a bunch of different weights, somewhere between 178 and 182, at the end of the week, you're going to average those together and you'll get your weekly average weight. And then that's the weight I would consider myself, the average. And you might notice, like when I do this, I notice really random things that one day I was like last week, one day I was 5 pounds heavier. I did not gain 5 pounds overnight because I'd weighed myself the day before and I knew something wonky happened. And the next day it was completely gone. Things like heavy workouts can make you go up in the scale up to 5 pounds. Leg day is a crazy thing. I actually think what can make us much saner here is to get really honest with what the scale is doing and start to see the patterns, start to see it as a data collecting tool rather than a torture device. Okay, so let me tell you exactly what to do because I've kind of brushed by it and I want to make sure that we get the details right. So if you're going to take on daily weighing, you want to pick a time in the morning right after you get up, but make sure it's like a consistent time. So if the time that you wake up varies from day to day, pick a time that's safe on most days. If you miss that time and you skip a day, don't worry about it. 6 days out of 7 is really fine. You just want to be mostly consistent. Then you want to make sure you've used the bathroom and that you're fasted. So you haven't eaten, you haven't drunk coffee, you haven't drunk a significant amount of water yet. You are as empty as you can be. And then you're going to take your weight, then you're going to write down your weight. And there are also various apps. One of them is called Happy Weight, where it will actually, you can input your weight and then it just gives you your average for the week. So it already does that work for you. But, a piece of paper in your medicine cabinet will work as well. Make sure that you're using a scale placed on solid ground is the other thing. Make sure your scale is as accurate as possible. You can't weigh yourself on carpet, just in case you didn't know that, or on level ground. So, use a good scale. The other thing I say is like a lot of scales, they do body fat percentage. The home scale's body fat percentage is not super accurate. I wouldn't stress over it too much, but you would want to do your weight on a daily basis or semi-daily. And then it's also a great time to pick a measurement to track if you want to go for extra credit. So I often will track my waist on a regular basis as well, though it's not as necessary to track every single day on that. Why not? If you'd like to track two things, do that. Make sure, again, that that's in a consistent place. So if you needed a protocol to follow, well, I suddenly all of a sudden got worried that people would be like, oh, well, one day I tracked at 10:30 and the other day it was like 9 and then it was 11:30 and then God forbid that some of you are like, and then I did it at 7:30 at night. No, don't do that. You need it at a consistent time. You'd be totally surprised if you weighed yourself, I don't know, every hour and saw what happened. I don't recommend doing that unless you're just super curious. It'll fluctuate. So don't make yourself crazy. Pick a consistent time, stick with a consistent time, be in as consistent a state as you possibly can be. All right, that's the details. Now, there are some people that this isn't going to work out for. People who get overly scale obsessed and can't get over the scale dictating their self-worth. For you, we might have to do a different approach, but I will say that I used to be more of that kind of person, but by getting really honest with what was going on every day, I was able to actually separate quite a bit from my feelings of self-worth about what the scale said, because I was able to say, no, I know how I'm eating. I know what I'm eating. I know over the course of the week what should be happening with my weight based on how much I'm eating versus what my energy expenditure tends to be. And so I don't get as frustrated as I used to. Am I frustrated that my metabolic rate could be a little better? Sometimes. But I'm like, oh, look, I'm doing a thing. I expect an outcome. I'm getting a reasonable outcome from what I expect. And it really helps my confidence level about what I can achieve by separating my emotional reaction to the scale. And I'm able to separate from that by getting a more thorough picture of what the scale is doing. Now, what I started this podcast saying is that this is the dumbest reason most people quit their fat loss. It's because they believe the scale fluctuations mean fat fluctuations, right? So if we only weigh ourselves a couple times a week or once a month, if we happen to step on the scale on a day that we're on the high end versus the low end versus the medium end, we often believe that all of our efforts have been for naught, right? Because you can, over the course of a month, lose 5 pounds of body fat. But if you just happened to weigh yourself on the wrong day at the wrong time, you could see you've lost nothing. If you happen to be on a light day the first day of your weighing, and then 30 days later you get on a very heavy day, just randomly, worst case scenario, you can look like you've lost no weight, but in fact you've lost a fair amount of weight. So I just want to advocate just getting really real with what's going on with your body, understanding that it does different things, it does wonky things. I'm not saying trust the process despite any evidence to the contrary. I'm saying don't throw out the process just because you haven't looked at the data carefully enough to know that it's actually working. So what I really advocate for people to do, again, if you have a eating disorder or, something going on mentally where weighing yourself regularly, you just know is not going to work for you, this tip is not for you. Please know yourself. Please be careful with yourself. Please don't take my advice to mean that this will work for every single human. I'm simply giving you a perspective that worked for me and works for many of my clients. I have many clients who used to think they were obsessed with the scale, and now they weigh every day and they're not obsessed with the scale. They're like interested in the scale. And oh, isn't that interesting? And it becomes data rather than, I don't know, things that mean things about ourselves and whether we're a good person or not. That we can sometimes, by getting really clear there and looking at the data more objectively, have a better result. So I see so many people, though, they do a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They're doing all the right things. If they just stuck with it, they would see fat loss over time. On average, they've been losing a half pound a week, which is a good rate of loss. People poo-poo that, but that will get you places. But say you're losing a half a pound a week over the course of the month, that's only 2 pounds. I mean, I get that's not you don't feel like you're going to win a Nobel Prize about it. But 2 pounds a week of fat loss is going to get you where you want to go eventually. versus staying the same weight for months on end or years on end, which haven't we done that? So I'm not saying you have to stay that low, but I'm saying let's say you're seeing success. The success is actually about a half pound a week. So at the end of the month, you're 2 pounds down, but you happen to step on the scale on a day you were a little bit up in terms of water weight, and it sort of completely hides or mostly hides that loss. A lot of people at that point give up. This isn't even working, and I'm working so hard. I'm trying so hard. I'm putting so much effort in. I'm so frustrated. Why am I even bothering? Does this sound familiar to anyone? Right? So this experience I hear about so often, but what they were doing was actually working. They just weren't being attentive enough to the details to really be able to separate the reality from the perception. And so, it might be, right? Because if we know we can go up 1 to 2% a day from that fluctuation that's unrelated to body fat, but if you think about it, and then you're losing a half to 1% of your body weight a week over the course of a month, you may completely disguise all fat loss within that water weight fluctuation. It may take up to 2, even 3 months to really see that progress. And so you can speed up for most people kind of being able to see that progress by doing that daily weighing that I look at. And by averaging these things out, you'll be able to actually see what's really happening with more clarity. And so that's a way that you can separate that. But then the second one is if that's not going to work for you, if that daily weighing isn't going to work for you, then you just have to stick with it. Because over time, you will see that average weight going down. Even if you only weigh once a week, over time, you will see that average dropping if you're doing the things it takes to make it drop. If you find over some extended period of time that your weight has not actually shifted any discernible amount, then you do some more investigating or you reassess. I recently decided to do a mini cut, you could call it, or just a short fat loss focused period before I went into winter. And I was doing what I like to do, which is I track my weight and I track my food intake for, a good enough period of time to see, am my weight stable? Is my weight going up? Is my weight coming down? What's going on there? And then I tweak to make adjustments to lower my intake if I want to lose more body fat so that I'm in a space where I'm going to lose, a good amount. And because I'm doing this for a short period of time, I set a pretty aggressive goal of wanting to lose about 1.25 pounds a week was my desire. And I've been able to maintain that level. And I have averaged actually 1.275 a week, which is, I feel like, whoa, this is amazing. But I'm eating way less than I want to be eating. And I'm eating way less than maybe I would think that I need to eat to see this result. But when I didn't see as much result as I wanted and I lowered the amount a little bit more, I did see the result. Now, at the end of this weight loss period, I'm going to undertake another reverse diet because I've really come to recognize that I need a little bit of a metabolic boost before I try and lose body fat again. And I'm going to need to double down on my resistance training because I need to add some muscle mass to really be happy with the level of intake of food that I want to intake because I like food. And so, again, just putting it out there, if anyone's giving away free muscle mass, I'm looking. I'm in the market. So just hit me up. Okay. So I'm going to be hitting up the gym, over the winter while I'm in my reverse, a lot more than I have been. I've been a little iffy on the whole gym thing. I've definitely been there, but not as much as I should be. And so that's my plan. So that's where I'm at. But, by really getting clear on monitoring my daily weight, I mean, I skip a day here and there when, timing doesn't align and life doesn't align. It's not like, but like most days I check in on that. I get my weekly average and then I've been able to be really clear about what's going on with my progress. If things are murky, you can't fix them. And so I want to have as much clarity about what I'm doing as possible. So there you have it. The stupidest reason that we give up on our fat loss is that we're tracking in a way that doesn't give us the straight story because we give up before we see results based on the way that we're tracking. Because that pesky non-fat loss based water and everything else fluctuation on the scale can disguise fat loss for up to 3 months if we aren't being very specific about what's going on. So that's just what I wanted you to know today. So I hope you have a fabulous week. Talk to you next week. If you have questions, you let me know. Don't forget that we have a Facebook community at Keto Life Support. You can join it on Facebook, ask me questions. You can suggest topics for future podcasts. I'll do a Q&A session if you want. Give me some Qs. I'll give you some As. All right? All right. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.